Hello, viewers. I previously reviewed my favorite Bond film, From Russia with Love. Now I'll be reviewing my least favorite Bond film, Diamonds Are Forever, a film about which there's a joke saying there are only 4 good things about it: Mr. Wint, Mr. Kidd, and Plenty O'Toole. Okay, so there's more to it than that. Now, one might say, but the film stars Sean Connery. How could you label it the worst? Well, if the movie Zardoz has taught us anything, just because your movie has Sean Connery, it does not automatically make it a good movie. So, Lazenby was out because of horrible advice from his agent to not take a 7-picture deal as Bond. The producers considered Burt Reynolds, John Gavin, Michael Gambon, our very own Dumbledore, and the best indicator of the comedic direction the films were to go, Adam West. They eventually bribed Connery back with $1.25 million, which is the highest amount ever paid to an actor at that time, and it visibly had its impact on the budget of the film. The plot features Blofeld using a diamond-refracted laser satellite to extort money from the world. While it is a bit far-fetched, it's not all that extreme for a Bond film. It opens with Bond, who seems to have gained a few pounds since his last appearance, interrogating an array of villains to find Blofeld. An interesting, or annoying aspect of this opening, and the ending for that matter, is that it goes for a middle way in the context of the other films. It is never made clear if the film is meant to be a direct follow-up to You Only Live Twice, Bond begins in Japan, and later Blofeld uses another space device, or if it is a follow to On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Bond is on a personal vendetta to get Blofeld, and M indicates that he gave Bond leave to go after him. It is something that is never addressed in the film, and thus makes this the second Bond film in a row to have continuity issues with the other films. So, Connery's back as Bond, and I'd say his performance is better than Lazenby's in the previous film overall, but it does not compare to his previous outings as Bond, or his later performance in Never Say Never Again. He just looks bored in this film. He's not in as good a shape, and the comedic tone does not suit his Bond. In fact, I think some scenes actually accentuate this fact. There's a scene where he obnoxiously corrects M on a comment regarding the year for Sherry. It takes too long, is not funny, and is distracting to a scene supposedly vital to the plot. This also contrasts one of the things I liked about Bond. While he approached much of his work with a certain casualness, he was almost always professional when he was meeting with M. For me, it made Bond more likable and less of a caricature when he wasn't always playful and knew when there was business to be done. Here, that concept is abandoned.
10 minutes and counting.
There's another scene where he disguises himself as a scientist to learn more about Blofeld's scheme. Here, instead of being sneaky, he draws attention to himself by arguing with the annoying Dr. Metz about how his section is not as highly regarded. Once again, not funny, not clever, and not important in terms of the narrative. Jill St. John portrays the first American Bond girl, Tiffany Case, and when compared to the previous Bond girls, she is distinctly shown as being devoid of class.
Blow up your pants.
Keep leaning on that tutor, Charlie, and you're gonna get a shot in the mouth.
Hi, Ernst. Is Superman giving you any trouble?
This is disappointing since her first scene built her up to be a strong character, someone who could be Bond's match. Bond introduces himself, and instead of falling directly into bed with him, she tells him she doesn't do that with business associates. She further displays cleverness by checking Bond's fingerprints with the glass that she gives him. Following this scene, her intelligence goes through a roller coaster. She's able to evade the inept CIA, including a now overweight Felix Leiter at Circus Circus, but is embarrassingly and easily caught by Blofeld's men. Near the end, she screws up Bond's plan to replace a vital cassette in Blofeld's device by putting the real one back in.
You stupid twit, you put the real one back in.
Come on.
In terms of finding an American Bond girl with class, I don't think we really get one until Moonraker. All that said, she does still look good in a bikini, and I like the actress's take on having been a Bond girl as seen in one of the Bond documentaries. Charles Gray, Mr. Jump to the Left himself, who also played Henderson in You Only Live Twice, plays Blofeld. He may be one of the weakest villains in the series. He's just not menacing. He is shown cross-dressing in one scene to sneak out of a hotel he took over, called the White House, though leaving in a helicopter on the roof would have been far more effective. He is shown taking lip from Dr. Metz, something that would have resulted in the death of the henchman in any of the other incarnations of the Blofeld character. There's also some borderline fourth wall breaking silliness for the character. For example, Bond finds out where Blofeld's base is by looking at a giant map in the White House and seeing a model in a place where the actual owner of the hotel did not own the territory. This would mean that when Blofeld took over, he decided to put the location of his secret base on the giant map for no reason. The finale of the film features Bond walking out in the open to Blofeld's lair, where he immediately cracks a bad joke.
Good morning, gentlemen. The Acme Pollution Inspection. We're cleaning up the world. We thought this was a suitable starting point.
Not only is it disappointing to not see Bond's attempt at sneaking in, but it also removes any feeling of danger that Bond might be in, and when that happens in an action thriller film, it just falls flat. To top it all off, Blofeld makes no attempt to kill, torture, or even question Bond, but instead shows Bond all the instruments in his plan, and even shows him how to turn it off. Unlike the previous villains who had a reason for keeping Bond alive, this Blofeld has no reason. In fact, the two almost act like best friends, despite their place as mortal enemies. It's like Blofeld saying, "Check out my new toy," and Bond saying, all this is indicative of the silliness of the entire anti-climax of the film. Leiter and company begin attacking the base when Bond lets loose a balloon. Blofeld attempts to escape in a mini submarine carried by a crane. Bond takes over the crane and starts knocking the sub into the building. Blofeld is left completely in the dark as to who is doing this, making it all the more unsatisfying. During this, Tiffany Case falls off the side of the rig because of her inability to use a machine gun. The film never explicitly reveals if Bond kills Blofeld. Sure, we see Bond leaving him on an exploding platform, but we don't see Blofeld die, and no one talks about it at the end of the film. Apparently in the script, Blofeld was to escape the oil rig on his Bathos sub, with Bond in pursuit on a weather balloon. Eventually the two would end up at a salt mine, with them fighting atop a mountain of salt. Blofeld would die by falling into a salt granulator. This is similar to how Dario dies in the film License to Kill. In the end, the filmmakers decided to make it ambiguous so they could use the character again. Unfortunately, because of yet another lawsuit by Kevin McClory, Eon could no longer use the character. Therefore, there is never a satisfying end to the character, though there is an ending to him at the beginning of For Your Eyes Only. I find this the most disappointing aspect of the movie. The guy was a recurring villain since From Russia with Love. He has gone on to cause devastation in Bond's life by killing his love. The guy needed to die, and in the most exciting way possible. Instead, we're left with very little, if any, indication of his death at all.
6 minutes and counting.
The overall setting of the film, Las Vegas, looks rather dated and cheap. It also seems rather incongruous with the classic nature of the Bond character, despite the original novel having taken place there. As another reviewer mentioned, Bond just seems out of place in Circus Circus when compared to all the extravagant places he visited in the previous films. There were also a number of plot holes and mistakes in the film. Plenty O'Toole is killed because Winton Kidd thought she was Tiffany. This contradicts the fact that Winton Kidd saw Tiffany earlier in the film, and there was no indication of how Plenty was able to find Tiffany's home. I know this is partly explained in a deleted scene, but if it impacted the plot, then it should have been kept in. Before meeting him formally, Tiffany Case knows who James Bond is. How is this possible if Bond is supposed to be a secret agent and she is a low-level smuggler? Why couldn't they get this stunt right? Even with the fact that two locations were used for the entrance and exit, they still could have mirrored one of the shots to correct this. How come the guy parked behind Dr. Metz doesn't say anything when Bond sneaks into his van? There were also some downright silly moments. In a poorly choreographed scene, Bond gets beaten up by two gymnasts, Bambi and Thumper. This is despite the fact that he is a well-trained secret agent who defeated the likes of Donald Grant and Oddjob. And why were they striking poses in this scene? There's a horribly done moon buggy chase, where the atrociously inept henchmen seem to fail without the assistance of Bond. A little note on the moon buggy, though. Connery actually purchased it in 2004 for around $50,000. Bond is shown making out with himself, as if I need to say more. Now, don't be fooled into thinking that I hate this film. As a Bond fanatic, I don't particularly hate any Bond film, and there are things to like in Diamonds. There's a decent fight between Bond and Peter Franks in a cramped elevator. It kinda harkens back to Bond's fight with Donald Grant to some degree. There's a cool scene where Bond climbs to the top of Willard White's hotel. There are some good jokes too.
Exceptionally fine shot.
I didn't know there was a pool down there.
We're showing a bit more cheek than usual, aren't we? What a pity. Such nice cheeks, too. If only they were brains.
The homosexual henchmen, Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, who were the inspiration for Kids Next Door's Wink and Fib, are among the most memorable of the series. They're unique in that there are two of them. The previous henchmen in the film said very little because they worked alone. These two develop throughout the film and are given someone to talk to, and even provide some interesting commentary on the events of the film.
2 minutes and counting.
Curious how everyone who touches those diamonds seems to die.
Not to mention they were pretty menacing. Well, more than Blofeld anyway. They even provide us with the only scene in the film where Bond is actually in danger, the tense sequence where he's nearly cremated alive. They did, however, provide a few stinkers, like their attempt to kill Bond by putting him in a pipe. Okay, was he supposed to die from this? Or were they just being deliberately inept so that we could have a unique death scene for the two of them? I don't know. Despite these good elements, this Bond film falls lowest on my list. Why? Because it was apparent that very little effort was put into it. It seemed that they just wanted to bank off the success of Goldfinger by having Sean Connery as Bond, Shirley Bassey singing the main theme, Guy Hamilton as director, and a predominantly American setting. There were even early drafts of the script where the main villain was to be Goldfinger's twin brother, and as interesting as it would have been to see Gert Frobe and Sean Connery together again, I'm glad they dropped this even sillier plotline. As I said, I don't hate this film, nor do I hate the comedic tone of some Bond films. Live and Let Die had a similar tone and is one of my favorites. But this film falls into the realm of self-parody, and because of the severely disappointing elements, if any other Bond film was on television at the same time as this one, I would watch the other.
10, 9, 8,